Hello and welcome to this European Resuscitation Council webinar. My name's Gavin Perkins. I'm the ERC Director of Science, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this evening's webinar. Tonight we've got a really exciting session installed for you. Just as the ERC vision is to provide high quality resuscitation for all, from a science perspective, we strive to make high quality science available to all. And what better way of celebrating that than through the EuReCa collaboration? It's one of the absolute landmarks and things of celebration for the European Resuscitation Council to work in partnership with the EuReCa collaborators to really demonstrate the power of collaboration. So I'm going to invite the panel to introduce themselves. We've got a fantastic panel of speakers, and I'm going to hand over to Jan Thorsten to start off.
Yeah, Gavin, thank you so much, and welcome everybody. My name is Jan Thorsten Gräßner. I'm the director of the Institute for Emergency Medicine at University Hospital Schleswig-Holstein in Kiel. But I'm also one member of the steering or organization committee of EuReCa, and the PI of the EuReCa THREE study. And I'm absolutely thrilled that we have more than 300 participants that like to join that session, because these are your data. If you're a national coordinator, a local coordinator, or someone that supported the EuReCa THREE study, we are here to say thank you to you that you provide the data, and we did our best, and you will see today, to analyze the things, to produce paper, and give that information back to you. So thank you so much, and I'm really happy to hand it over to Jan van Ent.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Jan van Ent. I'm emergency physician and senior researcher in the same institute as JT is. And in EuReCa, I'm part of the study management team and the national coordinator for Germany, as well as member of the German Resuscitation Registry steering committee. And I give the mic to Ingvild.
Thank you, Jan. My name is Ingvild Hjelmeland. I am the leader of the Norwegian Cardiac Arrest Registry, and I have been fortunate enough to be allowed to be part of the EuReCa team since 2014. I am also the national coordinator of Norway. And I hand over to Rolf Leffering.
Hello, my name is Rolf Leffering. I'm the last but not the least. So I'm located in Cologne, Germany. I'm a statistician and a professor for health services research. And I did the statistics for this study as for the previous two EuReCa studies as well. So I hand back to the guide.
Great, thank you. So what a fantastic lineup we have. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Jan Thorsten Gräßner. Thank you.
Yeah, Gavin, thank you again, and thank you to the whole team that we are able to manage this, and also thank you to the ERC for hosting that webinar and doing all the technical things. And I hope, Gavin, we said at the end of every presentation, we want to have the discussion. So if you have questions, please note them. And from the technical question, Gavin, you must help me. There's a Q&A section where they have to put the questions in, or what is the way how the participants can ask questions?
So I think, but I will invite Titania to clarify if I get it wrong, but I think that there's a Q&A tab where people can enter the questions. They will then be conveyed to me. And as Jan says, at the end of the whole presentations, when we've heard all of them, we'll bring the questions together. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, yeah, EuReCa and the big story behind, and it's always a pleasure to talk about a project what a lot of people here in the room on this screen, yeah, were working on over more than years. And I remember the first steps of EuReCa, they were long, long ago. And when I start with the presentation like EuReCa, why we do this, or why are we doing what we are doing, for a presentation like this, I always think I'm a little bit old, because when you are invited to talk about the history, it sounds a little bit that you are maybe part of that. And I hope I can describe some of the things what we did. What we did is one big thing what we never did before in the ERC, and I think this is what Gavin also mentioned. This is a collaboration of hundreds of thousands of emergency physicians, paramedic nurses, what were able to collect data. And this is just a screenshot of some of the logos of our participants. So sorry if I don't get every or any of that logos. Some of them changed, some new come together, but I want to describe in a short 5-10 minutes presentation what is the reason why we are doing it. And the important part is, if you don't have data, you can't analyze them. If you just feel and think about, oh, I am good or not so good, without data, you can't describe it. And the idea of EuReCa, the European Cardiac Arrest Registry, is that we provide data, and not only data in the different registries, what you can see here in your registries, but also putting data together. And we will hear later on what it means. But this is the magic behind the EuReCa story. And if you look at the first paper from 2011, what are the aims of EuReCa? It is the identification of differences and interpretation of definitions so that we may be more uniform likely. What does it mean? Everyone knows Utstein style. And when we started registry work, we thought, no problem. Every registry will follow the Utstein recommendation, put all the data together, and then you have results. We have learned that people have different definitions of the same definition. We have learned that the definition in one country could be not the same Sunday morning at 8, and in the night shift, another paramedic is coming and has another idea. This is a problem, but we have known that problem, and we've learned from each other how to handle that problems and to see that we can harmonize the data. And all of that data of cardiac arrest and the treatment, what the paramedics and the emergency physician did outside the hospital, so we're talking about out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, are such a wonderful data set, what we can use for having more information to know more about cardiac arrest. And as Gavin said, we want to provide that data, not only put them in databases, but also want to use the chance to give the presentation or the publications back and all the information what we have. There will be, or there is a dashboard of the ERC. There are information, all the papers are free available. So these are your data, and you should get them back that you can use them and see how things happen in Europe. Because if you know problems or not the best things, what happens in your system, you can ask another one that helps you and say, okay, in my system, we're doing that or that, and this is easier. The EuReCa 1 study was the first thing what we did in 2016, and you see a lot of names, and I hope that some of the authors from that list are also with us here in the audience, and maybe you can write a short comment in the Q&A section and show that you're here. So these are your data, and all the unnamed local coordinators or paramedics and nurses and physicians are also, again, very thanks from our side that you provide all that information. And if you see Europe, and if you see at the beginning 27 countries, this is a huge effort and a huge effect of what we did with collaboration. And we have countries with 100% coverage, like Norway, and England has the, I think, only mandatory registry in Europe that is ordered by law. We have some systems that have only one city in EuReCa 1, and we have others like Germany with, Jan can help me, with 60-70% of the population, what we can collect in the data. So this is Europe. And the results of EuReCa, when we start with EuReCa 1, we have 10,000 cases included. We had a 1-month study, and we learned a lot about what happens in the different countries. And when you see these numbers, this is the number of total population, the population covered, the percentage, and between maybe down to 3% up to 100%, you can see the differences. And you can see the number of cardiac arrest attempts and the magic number, not percentage, it's incidence. And Ingrid will can talk about this for hours. You can see the huge difference also. We have some systems. We have 19 cardiac arrest CPR started per 100,000 people per year. You have other systems with 104. So there is an inclusion thing. And if we want to understand data, and this is, I think, something what the ERC was very wise when they used the latest guidelines, the 2020 guidelines, we have an own chapter for epidemiology. We got all that data in because you must know what we are doing and you must know what are the right numbers. And Rolf will talk about this later when we talk about how to describe and combine things. And if you look at the ROS rate with the 95% confidence interval, you can see some systems with a very low ROS rate and other systems very, very high ROS rate. Of course, ROS is not the only answer. And we were able to get more information from some of the countries. But what you can see, this is Europe. These are the same guidelines. This, at the end, hopefully the same treatment or not. But these are the questions what came up when you see that results. Of course, some system with such a huge confidence interval has only a small number of cases. But you can see also systems with a high number that have 4 times higher ROS rates than the others. So this is not to blame the ones here. It's a chance to ask these ones what they do better and to learn from them. And this is what we try to do when we produce data. And what we're also doing is that what you see here, these are the people behind the data. These are the people behind the registries. These are the people behind EuReCa. And it's so important that you have people that do CPR on scene, and you need also people that do calculations like this here, maybe in a dark room with a computer. But both it's possible and both is needed. And I can tell you a secret, some of us do both. We're sitting in a dark room and analyzing data, and then the next time we're on the ambulance car, on the helicopter, and do the CPR if it's needed. But what I want to describe is that you can find people here, and it's behind every one of that persons is a number of hundreds of people in the country that provide the data and at the end help us to make EuReCa and the EuReCa idea possible. When we handle over, and I like this graph, and Ingvild, this compliment to you, this graph comes from you and your colleagues produced that, and you can see in another year for EuReCa 2, we're coming now to the next study, we have the coverage very high in some systems, we have a coverage of data or information very low, and we have some systems that are not reporting. But as you can see, Europe is still active in registry work. So EuReCa 2 in 2017, a 3-month study, you can see the covered population, nearly 200 million people, a huge number of people, and the biggest study ever in that time with 37,000 cases. And we focused on bystander CPR. We know, everyone knows that bystander CPR is a very important part, but how important is it? And now a more or less not so nice question a little bit later, what is a bystander? And you can see here the high number, you can see the CPR started. You have some systems where we don't start CPR. We have the ROS grade, we have the people admission to hospital, we have the hospital treatment, and the survival rate based on survivor admitted hospital, but also based on the starting number here. And you can see the missing data. And we start with 37,000 and miss some here, some there, and then we lose some people at the end because we don't have hospital data. But this is a sign, therefore, that the people are working on a very high level when they deliver data. So again, a big thank to everyone that helps us here. The ROS grade, starting from here up to there, you can remember maybe the slide, what I showed from EuReCa 1. EuReCa 2 is the same. There's a huge difference within Europe, and we can see there is something behind. So the question is, how about the overall survival rate? Now it's overall survival rate. And you can see people in some systems have a survival near to 20%, others lower than 5%. And again, what I said, we have focused on bystander CPR in the EuReCa 2 study. And this brings us to the idea, what should a bystander can do? Check core compress, is it really enough? Of course, it's better than nothing, but we had some understanding about first, is it better to do nothing? The answer is clear, do something. The question is ventilation, no ventilation. I come to this as another slide, but the biggest thing at the beginning was, when is a bystander a bystander? And you can see here and analyze what we have published, or Holger Maurer has published in 2019, based on a survey. And just for the easy question, bystander, yes or no, you can find a lot of descriptions here, like bystander by CPR. For most of the event, everyone will say yes. But the question, is the police alerted to CPR only? Is it a bystander or no? A lot of people say, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. And you can see a high occurrence when everyone in Europe said it's the same. But you can see also a big number of uncertainties when people say yes or no. And then go back to the Utzstein recommendation. Then go back to the idea, is the bystander just more than a yes or no? And they click in the box on the Utzstein document. And then we say, if it's yes or no, this has an influence on outcome. This is really something what we should keep in mind when we analyze data. Chest compression only, as I said, check core compress or more. This is also another paper born of the EuReCa data. And this is something I hand over like to Ingvild later on, that we can do more than just a description. We can do more analysis. And you can see that, yeah, based on that high number of data, because you never ever got a study. You get a study that will start with ventilation, with no ventilation, and do a randomization. You can't do this. No ethic committee will allow you to do that. So what we can see with the big number of data, that full CPR and people just with chest compression had a significant difference in ROSC and a significant difference in survival rate. So these are information what you got out of registries and what you should keep in mind when you plan your local investigation or local activities for maybe bystander programs. And maybe for us in our city, we try to force people to do both. And we want to do both. But again, better than nothing. But this is something what you can't do in studies. And this is what I want to show what we can do with registries. And during EuReCa 2, we figured out that treatment is one thing, but the time of the treatment, when things happen, is also very important. And the response time interval in the data what we have from EuReCa 2 started in very, very fast. And a big number, something between 5 to 15 minutes. And remember, 5 minutes or 15 minutes, that is a difference. 3 times more. That has an impact on the people that have maybe no bystander CPR and up to a very long time before the ambulance arrives. Call to scene time, longer than 30 minutes. We have in some systems a very, very high number of systems that arrive 30 minutes later. And others, they never ever because they are very fast. And this is also the question, is the definition right? Who is a paramedic? Who is a bystander? What is the NES system? But this shows us that we have to look at time points. And this was the idea for EuReCa 3. And so my last slides will just be a warm-up for Jan. So I'm the, how would you say, pre-group for Jan and can open the stage for him because I just give the teaser and time matters. And the question, what can we do in EuReCa 3? But first, let's think, who is EuReCa 3? Let's start, if it works, the video. So I hope I can change to the next slide. No, maybe the technician must help me because I'm not able to. Yes, thank you. So yeah, this was a warm-up for Jan van Ent, the EuReCa 3 study, and we are looking on time. We're looking on time points. We're looking at what time matters, and we can see things about EMS response intervals. We can see how long is the treatment time, how long is the transfer interval, all that information what we can get from the systems, and see what is an impact, because it's very important for you to use that data to do your plannings, to do your calculations. Where will be the next ambulance? Where will be the next hospital? Is it okay to be 5 minutes later on scene? Short answer, no. Or is it a problem if you are 5 minutes later in a hospital? Short answer, no. It's no problem, because if it's the right hospital, it's a nice thing. But no, I don't want to say everything what Jan wants to say, because this is a special thing between all of us. And yeah, this is what we want to know and want to understand. What is the influence on time? These are the slides what Jan will show you later. And I want to say some last words about what we can do also with our EuReCa information. And it's not only a view to the history and say, hey, we did 1, 2, 3, and it's all, and now sometimes it comes 4. We have also a wider collaboration, and this is GOCA, the Global Out-of-Hospital Cardiac Arrest Registry Network. This is a group or a connection of people, and you can see AusRock. These are the Australians. You can see BASICS. This is a new registry coming up in China with a huge number of cases within every year. That is interesting. We have CANROC, we have CARES, the American system. We have EuReCa, these are Europe, and we have PAROS, the Asian system. So what we are able to do is now use the EuReCa network, use the EuReCa data, use your data and your information to combine it with every registry all over the world and learn from each other. So with every data set, what you integrate into your national registry or your local registry, you are able to get information about what you are doing. If you share your data kindly with EuReCa, you can understand what happens in Europe, but you can also share your data for a worldwide collaboration. And this is what I think is one of the biggest things what we achieved during the last years. We have really a worldwide connection with people that are interested in doing CPI in a better way. So countries in Europe are willing to report data on out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. The incidence is varying, yes, but we have to analyze this and to find the reasons behind. And we will see what happens with an EMS. And if you know one EMS system, you know exactly one EMS system. And if you want to know more about times, I hand it over now to Jan. Thank you for listening to my short history.
Yeah, JT, thank you very much. And thank you very much for giving a brief overview over the history of the EuReCa network and the EuReCa studies. And I hope now the slides will advance. Yes. And I will give you a brief overview over the major findings of the EuReCa THREE study. For the sake of time, I will go not too much into detail, so I just can recommend to download the PDF of the publication and have a look in the detailed information and maybe also in the supplementary material, what is very, very interesting. But I wanted to use the 10 to 15 minutes now to talk about the question, does time matter in terms of cardiac arrest, out-of-hospital cardiac arrest treatment, or does it not? Or is it maybe more so? And JT also has elaborated on the EuReCa network, and I will stress this again. That is the network and the national coordinators and the study management team and all collaborators. That is the fun part in EuReCa. So to sit there to discuss research questions, to discuss differences and similarities in EMS setup, to discuss important points what we have to look into in our data analysis, to motivate people to be part of the EuReCa network and to collect data for the EuReCa studies. That is a really fun part, beside, of course, the data work and the epidemiological work to analyze the data and to get some information. But as you know from many studies, for those of you who are involved in research and in study design and study setup, when you have done the first study, you may come out of the study with more questions than answers to just go for the next one. So, and we already heard that with the EuReCa 1, we had 27 participating countries. We had roughly 11,000 cases in a 1-month period. That was in 2014 and was just the proof of concept to say, okay, it's possible to collect data within Europe at least for a month and to get more or less robust data on the epidemiology of out-of-hospital cardiac arrest out of it. With EuReCa 2, we did a little better, and we did a little longer. So we extended the study period to a 3-month period, and that was the last quarter of 2017. And the numbers we already heard today, but what we have seen in EuReCa 2, for example, is that the time frame, and does time matter? The time frame was maybe not ideal. So you see, there is the holiday season within the study period, or there was the holiday season within the study period, so the December. And we know that in many European countries during holiday season, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of travel going on. And is it really, for this second half of December, is it really the real numbers we are getting from the different EMS? We don't know. So, but we were very happy with the quarter of a year study period to get really robust data on out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. So we stick to a 3 months time period. but we changed a little bit from August to end of November for the EuReCa 3 study. And as JT said, we focused very much, of course, on basic epidemiology, but also on different time intervals. Because what we learned from EuReCa 2, and I will quickly go back to the bystander question. What we learned that the definition of bystander is so much different within or between different European countries and even within different European countries. For example, when I discussed the question of what is a bystander in two different German EMS, you get maybe 10 different opinions. And so that's the same problem what we have with time intervals. So what is the correct response time? When does response time start? And we have discussed those questions within the Utstein group with the update of the Utstein recommendations for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest last year. So is it the first ring of the telephone in the dispatch center? Is it when the telephone was picked up? When does this response time end? Does it end when the ambulance car stops on the street next to the scene, or is it when the paramedics or the emergency physician arrives on the patient's side? So we have a little bit of uncertainty there, but even though that makes it for us as the study team of EuReCa 3 even more important to have a look on the time intervals and have a look on the impact of the time intervals, knowing the bias that we may be not getting the same intervals measured in each and every country and in each and every EMS. But on the bigger picture, with the number of cases we have collected, we are quite sure that we having a good idea and a good overview of the impact of time intervals on the success of resuscitation after out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. And this is, of course, we have some secondary research questions, but this is Ingvild's topic, to motivate people to submit some interesting research proposals to the EuReCa team to get the calculations done there. So September the 1st till November the 13th, 2022, almost 48,000 cases included, thereof almost 35,000 cases where CPR was started or commenced, started by bystanders or EMS or commenced by EMS, and with the focus of time intervals, especially the response time interval and the transfer time interval, and as well as the treatment interval. How long do we do CPR until ROSC or until we are deciding to stop CPR and declare the patient dead? Published in Resuscitation, we are very thankful that, again, Resuscitation has accepted EuReCa 3. I think we are getting a good auditorium, we are getting a good distribution of the knowledge within the publication in Resuscitation, and have a good network there to spread the knowledge. So what have we done? And you might have seen this, you might think you have seen this slide before, but that was the EuReCa 2 data, that is EuReCa 3. So as I said, we are starting with 32,033 cardiac arrests confirmed by EMS, and CPR was started by EMS. Out of this, 9,922 patients achieved ROSC on scene, while 21,900 something achieved no ROSC. Out of this 9,900, almost 7,200 were admitted to hospital alive with ROSC, so they had survived event. Out of this 21,900 with no ROSC on scene, 3,800 were transported to hospital with ongoing CPR and had hospital admission with ongoing CPR, and 20,808 were declared dead on scene, and no transport was initiated out of these patients. And some patients crossed over from the ROSC group to the dead on scene group and no transport, because then, they had a rearrest and no second ROSC, and then they were declared dead on scene. And what you can see here, the missing rate in this patients is quite low, with in total 200 and roughly 220, 225. And then we have hospital treatment. And for the outcome data, we have 2,292 survivors who left hospital and 7,387 who have not survived hospital treatment and died within the hospital treatment. But of course, and this is one of the limitations still, and we got better there compared to EuReCa 2, where we've seen we had almost 2,200 missing data on hospital admission, on hospital outcome. In EuReCa 3, we only had 1,321 missing data sets on hospital outcome. What is still not ideal, but better, and we are very thankful to all national coordinators who did the job to collect all those data also from the hospital. So we got better there. But again, what are we talking about? So the average, the mean age was 68.5 years. That is, when you have a look in different publications from different European registries of cardiac arrest or European resuscitation registries, that is the overall, the mean age we find in many, many countries. So that is quite reliable. And even though almost 62% of our patients were male, compared to the international literature, yes, it's reliable data. That is what the literature is telling us over the last years. When you have a look on the cause of cardiac arrest, we had 4.5% traumatic cardiac arrest. That is also what we have seen in the last EuReCa studies, and what we have, for example, seen in the data from the German resuscitation registry over the almost last 20 years. Shock algorithm remained low, below 21%. And what is interesting is bystander CPR rate in overall average, it was 52.5% in the whole EuReCa cohort. That is quite exciting, I think, because you have European countries where your bystander CPR rate is quite low, and you have the big bubble in the middle where it is roughly about 40, 50, 60%, and then you have the countries where you have very high bystander CPR rate, 80% and above, for example, Norway. So to have it in average above 50%, I think that's quite okay. Still, there's something we can work on. Have a look on response time intervals. And here we are just focusing on response time. And what we can see, it's even the same with the bystander CPR rate as I told a minute ago. We have the big bubble here in the middle where the response time in average is something between 8 minutes and 12 minutes. And we have some outliers here on the left side, where is it roughly about 5-6 minutes. Maybe inclusion bias, maybe a low number of cases, but most likely that those data is only coming from 1 or 2 centers, what is more urban and what has in average shorter response times. And you have the outliers on the right side here. And what really stick to our eyes when we had a look at the first look into the data set and into the data we received is the average response time here of 20 minutes. And average of 20 minutes, so you will know with basic statistical knowledge that if you have an average of 20 minutes, you have quite a high number what is higher than 20 minutes, and also some that are lower than 20 minutes. And we say, okay, what is the problem here? And yes, it's again different EMS setup in different parts of the country. And it came back to definition. We had a long talk to the national coordinator, for example. And there's again the topic of data definition. Usually we have assumed and we have written in our data set for EuReCa 3 that the response time is measured from alarm or receiving of call in the dispatch center, alarm of the first vehicle till arrival of the first vehicle. But in some European countries, only the physician-staffed first vehicle is counting for the response time. So yeah, you see, there's huge difference in Europe on the outliers on the left and then the right. But in average, it's roughly between 8 and 12 minutes response time. What is quite okay. Ooh. So have a look on the EMS treatment time. How long do we do CPR on a patient? And you all know the guidelines, and you all know the recommendations on the guidelines, when to stop or when you can consider stopping CPR, 30 minutes of advanced cardiac life support or advanced life support, low end-tidal CO2, non-shockable rhythm, and so on and so forth. And what we can see here is that in some European countries, for example, in Albania, you have a quite low EMS treatment time, roughly less than 10 minutes. And then you have the average here in the middle again, like have a look on Germany, it's 21, 22 minutes in average. And what is, as an emergency physician and pre-hospital emergency physician from Germany, you say, okay, that's from the gut feeling, it's quite okay. It's that what we are doing. And you have some countries like Spain or Romania or Poland or Malta, where you have an average quite a long EMS treatment time, like over 50 minutes here in Malta, or 35, 36 minutes in Romania, and almost 40 minutes in Poland. Even though you have a huge confidence interval, that of course makes that a little bit less robust than you have shorter or smaller confidence intervals. But still, we have this variation in EMS treatment time in Europe over the different countries. But in the middle here, it's roughly about 20, 22, 25 minutes. But let's have a look on outcome. So what does the data tells us about outcome? So for response time, we have data available in 25,567 cases. And in all patients, the response time in average was 8 minutes. For those who had never achieved ROSC, was 8 minutes. For those who have achieved ROSC, any ROSC, it was 7.7 minutes, and it for the survived event, it was 11.2 minutes, 12.6, 12.2, 12.6, 11.2, 11.0 for the ones who survived the event. And for the survivors, it was even shorter of 10.4 minutes. And for the EMS treatment time, we had data available of 19,681 patients. The treatment time on all patients was 29.5 minutes. If you have never achieved ROSC in your patient, it was quite long compared to all patients, and compared to any ROSC and the survivors, it was 32.7 minutes. So they did, let's say, stick to the guidelines, of course, what is quite good news, I think. And then for the any-ROSC patients, they had shorter resus times or treatment time of roughly 21 minutes. And for the survived events and for the survivors, of course, they have achieved ROSC. They have treatment times that were even lower, so they have achieved ROSC quite more early than for the other patients. Let's have a look on the travel time to hospital. Let's have a look on the travel time to hospital. And of course, you can see in the numbers up here, it's only available for 4,129 patients. But for all patients, we had a travel time to hospital of almost 15 minutes, 14.9. For the ones who have achieved any ROSC, it was 15.7 minutes. And what is interesting here, even though it's, of course, it's statistically significant, but it's not that huge difference. Survived event, they had a travel time to hospital of 15.8, and the survivors had even a longer travel time of 16.4 minutes. And that is quite interesting, because what it tells us is that on the one hand, travel time may not play the big role in terms of survival and survived event and survival. And what it tells us as well is that our EMS personnel, the paramedics and the emergency physicians in some systems, are really able to manage those highly critical ill patients on the scene, on the road, and manage to stabilize them so that it doesn't play any role if the travel time is some longer or not. And when we compare it to the data, and I remember some papers from Australia, for example, where they have quite long travel times, they have already published a couple of years ago that there was, in their settings, no difference in terms of the travel time and survival of the event and survival till hospital discharge. And also it makes it interesting for patients with having an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest in, for example, austere settings, even though we have some other challenges there. This is just the same response time and survival correlation. Eine Minute. The response time and survival correlation in a graph. So the response time is here and the survival rate is there. And you see, as shorter it's not necessarily that as shorter the response time is, as higher the survival rate is. So that is quite interesting to see, but you see here some outliers we have already seen in the other graphs, that with very long response times, you have a lower survival rate. That is the one of my last slides. What I wanted to show here, and that is also interesting, we have the minutes of onset, after onset of CPR here, so the duration of CPR and the ROSC rate. And you see that within 17 minutes of all CPR, 50% of all ROSCs are achieved. And if you are doing CPR longer than 62 minutes, there will be no benefit in terms of achieving ROSC. So that is quite interesting. So going back to the guidelines, our recommendations of 30 minutes, maybe not so bad. So to come to a conclusion, yes, EMS response time matters. And that is good news. Travel time from scene to the hospital does not seem to have the big impact on survival. The shorter response time, the more patients survive. And 50% of our ROSCs is achieved or are achieved within 17 minutes of resuscitation. So that is the basic information from EuReCa 3 I wanted to give you tonight. And I'm very much looking forward to your questions in the Q&A session. I have to take care 3 minutes of my little daughter. Something happened in the living room and I have to look what mess is there. And I hand the mic to Ingvild. Ingvild, please.
Thank you so much, Jan. I think we just have the new young ERC member joining us. Thank you so much for listening in. I would like to just join JT and Jan in saying that all this work that we have done is because you did all the work before collecting all the data. So we are just sort of skimming the cream here and telling you what you have already collected information about. I will talk a little bit about what is now possible. We have published the overall results, but what can we do now? So these were all the aims. I'm not going to read them out. I'm just going to very quickly jump to the next one. We've answered almost all of our questions. There is just one question left, that we have not answered in the EuReCa 3 paper, and that is longitudinal changes from EuReCa 1, EuReCa 2, and EuReCa 3. We would then have to look at the incidence of patients never transported to hospital. That could also be a research question that we really didn't focus on in EuReCa 3 paper. And the incidence in Europe of survival of traumatic etiology. And if you do want to look at incidence, I would love to argue why use incidence and not percentage, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that here now. We could also look at what the incidence of survival after out-of-hospital cardiac arrest from causes when the people is brought to hospital with unsustained ROSC, not survived event, they're ongoing CPR on admission. We haven't dug into that either. And we have not really looked at children yet. However, there is an ongoing project looking at the under 18s. It says under 16 in our protocol, but the under 18s is sort of the legal children in Europe. So we have a project with a researcher from Norway and one from Germany that is currently doing these analyses now. I think the analyses are done and they're just sort of writing up the paper. If you think that some of these questions are really interesting, it is possible to do these analyses. However, there are some rules. We know that there are more than 300 people at this seminar, which means we can't really try to answer all your questions in one go. So if you do want to do a subgroup analysis, the national coordinator in your country can apply. And the research question that you have has to be within the aims of this original EuReCa 3 study protocol. All countries that have contributed data to the EuReCa 3 study will be informed about the study, and they can withdraw their data from these subgroup analyses. The UK data is no longer available for further analysis, and if you do want to include the UK, we actually have to ask again for them to submit the data. Any new research questions will have to be a new EuReCa data collection and a new EuReCa study. Very briefly, if you want to do some more research, please send your project plan to the PI, Professor Jan Torstein Gressner. The steering committee of EuReCa will then evaluate your proposal and check if it's within the research questions and what is possible. We will inform all the NCs about any study protocol that we approve, where they will then approve their participation. And the steering committee, the study management team, and will be co-authors. All national coordinators will be added as collaborators. So we do recommend that you use Resuscitation or Resuscitation Plus, as they allow to add collaborators, which will then be listed in Medline. So this was a very brief survey, user manual on how to proceed if you do want to do further analysis. And this information will be shared, so you don't have to take pictures or write it all down. We will share it and it will become available for you. This was my shortened presentation. I will now leave it to Rolf to tell you, if you do want to proceed, what experiences have we had and how should we handle all the nice challenges we have found.
Okay, hello from my side. I try to make it rather briefly because we would like to have a little bit of discussion. So I will give you a little bit view behind the curtain, because if you do a study like this from 28 countries, you get 28 different data files, and it's not just putting them into one data and start analyzing. So the process is a little bit more. But before I tell you about the problems behind, let me say that in EuReCa 3, we have the best data quality ever. And so we improve from one to the next trial, but still there is room for improvement. So I got different data files, and we decided to have, again, an Excel sheet. So I did not a smiley, because Excel is nice, but it's not a database program. So, for example, if you define a field as a number, there should be a number and no text, for example. This is a simple sign. Nevertheless, Excel is well distributed, so I got a lot of Excel sheets, and I had to import it into a real statistical software, which makes a lot of problems. And just to show a little bit here, so especially time and date formats are very problematic, and I use several tricks. The national coordinators were very helpful. So during this process, I repeatedly asked questions to clarify something, and got quick feedback from the national coordinators. But sometimes, and it happened more than twice, I get a new data set, and I had to do the formatting again with the new data. So the last update of data was in the pre-final publication period, where I get a new number for covered population. So time variable is a problem. We had a dataset version, but 2 countries used the previous data version. Hungary submitted several files for each month. The Dutch didn't provide time points. They calculated the time differences already, which was nice. So I do the same. So from the given time points, I calculate the time spans. And unfortunately, there were a lot of plausibility breaks. And this is quite normal. So we got more than 30,000 data sets, and their errors may happen. But some of the errors could be checked and corrected, because there is, So some, for example, time sequences, they can be checked. So some of the problems that occurred is, for example, one variable said there was no CPR, but another variable says, yes, EMS started. Or a big point was, who did start CPR? They say it was EMS, but later in the database, they said there was a bystander who started. So what is true? So I tried to solve as good as I could from the given things. And if I had no plan, I contact the national coordinator. So this is some of the problems. For example, Romania, by chance, we identified 120 cases which were entered twice into the database. So there were double entries. And of course, we deleted them. This is part of it. And specific problems for data sets from certain countries. This is not to blame a certain country, but for example, we had from Poland only 27% with non-confirmed cardiac arrest, which we couldn't believe, but nearly all of them received CPR. So we found solutions for this. In general, if you get, if you have in a country, if you have an existing registry, the data quality is better, because data collection was organized by the registry and there is multiple plausibility checks performed. But so they could not provide all the data which we would like to have. So we are restricted by the data set which was used. So some interesting wrong codings, some mixed up the 1 and 2 values, or Cyprus coded the death cases with a 1 instead of survivor. So there are a lot of details which only come up when you did the analysis, and when you identify that a certain country has some curious results. So you have to go back and see the original data files. And even we get from some countries some message like, oh, we got 100 new information on hospital outcome, which I say, wow, nice, because our data quality improved, but I have to re-import all the data and redo all the analysis involving outcome. So at the end, we have a quite nice data set for analysis. And one point which I want to point to is the incidence. So we calculate an incidence per 100,000 per year, and we see a big variation in Europe. And maybe, why is it in some countries so high or so low? A low incidence may happen that on the one hand, not all cardiac arrests were covered, or the covered population was too optimistic and the true value was smaller. But this is where we have to look a little bit closer. Finally, this is an overview of the time points, which is the new element in EuReCa 3. You have time of arrest, time of call, by start of bystander, by start of helper, start of telephone CPR, arrival at scene, start resuscitation, having ROSC or not, shock time, end of resuscitation, left scene, arrive at hospital. So only the red ones were completely empty. So for many countries, you see that time data were provided, but as you can see here, for example, not for all cases. So it's a varying number of cases where data are available for the different time points. And of course, there occur typing errors. And so we calculate this time differences. And this, you see, we have the call to scene time, which is the best availability in the whole data set. It's used as an indicator in several countries. We have a 95% completeness rate there. Total treatment time, EMS treatment time, time to hospital. You see the color coding. So it's not very frequently available in some countries. And for example, if you do plausibility checks and come up with a negative time, you say, that couldn't be, and you can try to fix this, but a positive error could not always be fixed. And therefore, we defined a reasonable times, allowed range of plausible values and excluded values which seem unplausible. So let me say summary and future improvements. We know that typing error rate is around 0.5%. So every 200 entering of data, you will make an error. And this is not a directed error, it's by random. So it increases a little bit in noise. And when we have 32,000 cases and each case with 45 items, that means we have 1.4 million data points in our data set. And having this error rate, that means that we have 7,000 errors in the data set. However, on the other side, we have it's the wrong one. It's 1.3 million correct data points. And still we could improve. But finally, we have the existing EuReCa 3 data set is a relatively clean and inconsistent data set which could be used for further questions. And maybe if there is a future data collection, we implement some plausibility checks already during data collection, which helps a lot and makes results faster available. Thank you very much. So this is the final from the view behind the curtain.
Great, fantastic. It's been a really fascinating room of three, providing, people to put entries into the chat. We've had a couple of questions, data about mechanical that.
Gavin, I'm unsure because I have some problems with your microphone, but maybe it's only on my side. You ask about mechanical CPR and if we analyze data about mechanical CPR. Is it correct? Okay. So I hope you can understand me, Ingrid, Rolf. Yes, okay, good. So mechanical CPR, the question about that, and when I'm correct, in the Utstein recommendation from 2014, there was no information about mechanical CPR. We added in the latest Utstein, And for the data what we have analyzed in EuReCa 3, we don't have that information in every registry. So from my knowledge, but maybe Ingrid and Jan can add, it was not a part of the Utstein recommendation, so it was not a part of the EuReCa 3 dataset, but there will be a chance for EuReCa 4 if we want to look on mechanical CPR to analyze things like that, because I can say for the German registry, we have put in information about mechanical CPR, and I maybe can ask Ingrid and you, Gavin, how about UK and Norway?
So I can reply from a UK perspective. It's not something that we routinely collect, and in fact mechanical CPR is not widely used in the UK. It tends to be a specialist asset that the helicopter and physician-led service will bring to the scene.
And from Norway, we do have this available, and we had it for several years, and it is used quite frequently. So this would be information available in Norway.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move to the next question now, which is to celebrate EuReCa 3, but to pose the question, what's EuReCa 4 going to be, and how do people have an opportunity to shape that?
Okay, maybe Gavin, I start again, and then the colleagues can add. I think this is something what we have to discuss during the ERC conference in Rotterdam, and I think this is the best place to meet, to also meet the national coordinators and to discuss exactly that, because there's sometimes a lot of specialist questions, and I remember some discussions years ago when we want to analyze the bystander CPR and people want to ask how many bystander CPR school children do resuscitation in a helicopter. The answer is relatively simple, no one. And if you have questions like that, this will be a problem. But what we want to do is that we want to collect the information from the national coordinators, to collect all that information and ideas from our participants. And I think there will be no better place than Rotterdam this year to meet us in person and discuss exactly that. And then, to be honest, we have to go back to figure out with all the national coordinators, are the data available? Because we have two very important parts within EuReCa. We want, as Rolf said, right data sets, correct data sets, but we want also to get as many systems with us as possible. And if it's just a special question that only can be answered in 2 of the 27 or 29 registries, it could be a bilateral study and not a EuReCa study. So the question must be good, and we must be able to answer it, and we want to get as many as possible registry with us. Maybe for some questions, not everyone, but this is always a compromise. But this is what we absolutely love to discuss during Rotterdam meeting.
Great. No, thanks, JT. And please do drop into that workshop session. I think it's going to be a really, fantastic opportunity to help shape EuReCa 4. Another question's come in, which has come from Italy, and it relates to outcomes for patients who are transported with resuscitation in progress. So in other words, a ROSC hasn't been achieved at scene, and they remain in cardiac arrest. Were there any insights from EuReCa 3 in relation to that?
I can actually answer that, and there were no analysis done. This is one of the open questions that is possible to do now at a later stage.
Great, thank you. And following up then, potentially another question for you, Ingvild, was there anything on first responders, the use of AEDs and community response type programs?
We have collected quite a bit of information, but bystanders and first responders were not a focus in the EuReCa 3 paper. So we really need to look if the questions that are posed would actually fit into the study protocol. If they do, we can do the subgroup analysis, but if we haven't written it into the protocol, this is not a question that we can do in EuReCa 3 data.
Great. No, thank you for that. The 2 remaining questions I think that I can answer. The first is, when will the data become available on the ERC dashboard? And I think the answer to that is very soon. So Wolf has, very kindly double and triple checked the data set, but that should be available on the ERC dashboard shortly. And then there was a question as to where people can get hold of the paper and information about the study. So I think the information from this webinar, which is being recorded, will be available on the ERC website after it's been prepared. The paper will be distributed to all workshop participants by email either later today or tomorrow, and the publication is open access, and so it will be possible once the final version is published. I think it's the in press or the online one that's available at the moment, but once the final version is available, it'll be open access and everyone can download. Great. So the questions have come to an end. We've run slightly over the allotted time. We're delighted that Jan has returned. We hope that your care of the next young ERC member is complete, at least in the short term. I think it just comes to me to thank everybody who has participated and spoken in the webinar for the huge contribution, not just in terms of the delivery of today's webinar, but the year's worth of planning and execution of what has been an absolutely fantastic and the third landmark study from the EuReCa network. Thank you also to all of the participants. It's really been your participation in today's webinar that's really motivated the team to come forward and share data with you. And then finally to the ERC for their support of the EuReCa network and also for hosting this webinar. Thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your days. Take care.